then you win a world championship. And after another little spell of not. What does that championship do in your mind in '09?
It's hard, man. I mean, winning is hard. It's difficult to do. There's been plenty of years before 2009, we thought we were going to win a World Series. We thought we had a team that was going to win, no doubt. I mean, go to 2004. We had 3-0 lead against Boston. We thought we were going to win a World Series. So it is hard to do. I never took it for granted. I know Alex didn't because he hadn't won it before then. But it's a lot of work, man. It really is a lot of work. So I don't want to say you exhale. You can exhale for a minute, but then you have to get ready for the next year. But every team is different. You know, with the group of 2009, we had some new players. We had CC, we had AJ, we had Tex. But some of the guys that were there before, we had been through some losing seasons. So, man, it was a good feeling.
I'll tell you, for me, Jason, I remember giving Derek a big hug at Yankee Stadium. But it was so much relief. I certainly exhaled because I had played 15 years. And ultimately, I mean, I would have been absolutely heartbroken to move position, to come here for the greater good of the team, and to come up short. Remember, I grew up watching Dan Marino and Charles Barkley, two of my favorites.
Right.
And it breaks my heart to this day. They say, yeah, but.
Yeah.
And moving, it was this complete validation. And I was just so thankful to God to put this thing to come true. You know, as a great baseball fan, it was the greatest thrill of my baseball career by far. And I would move to third base 100 out of 100 times to be part of the Yankees championship run that year.
One thing, you know, that Alex was talking about, switching positions and finally winning a championship. We didn't, the guys that were there before, I say we, there was a few of us that were there before, we also didn't want, at the end of our career, say, oh, well, we were lucky, we won 4, not lucky, but we won 4 out of 5, our first 5 years in the big leagues, and we couldn't win again. You know, so the thing in New York is it's a constant reminder every single day that you have not won. You know what I mean? It's like, you got to win this year. You got to. They don't care what you've done in the past, which is the reason why I think a lot of people can't play in New York. You can't deal with the expectation level. So we were constantly reminded from 2000 up into 2009. So you get tired of hearing the fact that you haven't won in 9 years. You need to win again. And I think, you know, New York is a hot spot. You talk about the business part of it. New York is a hot spot. So when you win, I'm sure it elevates everyone at that point, you know, because I've always said playing in Yankee Stadium is like performing on a Broadway play. You feel like it's the top ticket in town. You know, you feel like the lights are brighter. Everyone comes out, every celebrity, you know, every entertainer is there to watch the Yankees play. And the reason they show up is because you win.
Well, one thing I've always marveled at, Derek, I've gone through so much in my life through therapy and all that kind of stuff to really, it was around, I'm 48 now, it was around 45 where I look back at Derek's career and I said, holy shit, I really got an opportunity. I never thought we would ever get close again because we've had, you know, our setbacks, partly because of my shortcomings. But I said, I really have an opportunity to appreciate what an incredible career you had and to be in the greatest city, the biggest market in the world, but yet be a little bit unknown of what's going on off the field. And I remember how much I failed and tripped, and the more I tried, it was like quicksand, the deeper I would get myself into it. And Derek would say, he would say two things to me. All you gotta do is make contact. You're so damn strong, stop striking out. And then he would say to me, you don't have to tell them anything. And when he told me that, it didn't make sense. How the hell did you do that and do it so well?
Well, I always wanted to have a separation with what I did publicly, my job, my career, and my private life. I truly believe once you let the toothpaste out of the tube, you cannot put it back in. Once you give people a little taste of what you're doing in your private life, they want more, they want more, they want more, and they feel as though you owe it to them. Now, I understand it. I was just never comfortable sharing my private life. You know, I always wanted to keep it to myself because my job came first. I wanted no distractions. And I also understood, you know, when you're playing professional sports, I knew I did not need the media to do my job. Eventually, they're going to need me at some point, right? So if I went out and performed on the field, I didn't have to worry about what anyone said. Because when I wasn't opening the door to my private life, so the only thing you could talk about or confirm was what I did on the field. And I just had an understanding of that from a young age. I don't think anyone told me it. I just knew that I would try to do whatever I could in my mind to limit distractions. I would address something once. That's
cool
it.
car.
I wouldn't talk about it again. The more you talk about it, the more the story continues on. You know, people would ask us about our side.
It's like a
We'd address
Buick
it one
Skylark.
time. Don't ask me again.
Yeah, and I would talk about it every week. And he's like, dude, you're killing me. Like, you don't have to answer. He was great. I mean, by the way, stuff I would never talk about publicly to anyone, but there was some real stuff that I was going through in my life that he gave me the greatest advice, and I didn't listen, and it hurt me tremendously. So my point is, over the years, I get to understand Derek Jeter's greatness as a human being so much more than when I played, because I was just too close to it. And I didn't have the tools. And that's not an excuse. I really tried. I just didn't know what the hell I was doing. I was pretty good on the field, though. And that's where I shined, you know?
Were you frustrated with him when he didn't listen to you?
Well, I would only say frustrated if it became a big story.
Yeah.
Like, well, if we're talking about things that didn't matter on the field, not just with him. I mean, it could be anyone.
Yeah.
You know, that was frustrating because I wanted, when I got to the park, to the stadium, I wanted the conversation to be about the game. And that's it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so in your business life, one of the really interesting decisions you make, and I feel like this is actually of a piece, is to go with Jordan Brand. I mean, that's a big decision on your part. And you're sort of early in the game, I think it's fair to say.
Yep.
Tell us about that decision, because that's seminal not just for you, but it's candidly seminal for that brand, too.
Yeah, you know, I first met Michael in 1994 while he was playing baseball in the Arizona Fall League.
Wow.
And I pointed out he was not as bad as everyone makes him out to be. I mean, you take off, since Little League, and then you're playing baseball at 30 years old in Double-A, you hit 200.
That's a 10-year contract
easy.
today. That's pretty damn good.
Yeah, it's not easy to do, so he was not as bad as everyone says. So I first met him in Arizona, and we just developed a relationship from there. He's like a big brother to me, you know, like Magic is to you. I know you speak highly about Magic all the time. He's one of the first athletes alongside Magic that really took their abilities on the court and it translated into business. They had the business mindset because, you know, up until that point, and I'm not saying anything about previous athletes, but it was all, you just perform on the court, or you perform on the field. When your career's over, that's it. Go get them. Figure something else out. I think those two were business savvy, and they thought about post-professional athletic career. And, you know, Michael's been as successful as anyone, and he's been a mentor to me since. He's like a big brother, like I said, and just thankful he asked me to be a part of the Jordan brand. And, you know, when it first started, like, what do you mean part of it? It's a basketball brand. What is a baseball player going to do?
Right.
But he wanted me to be the baseball player and help him build the business. So
Did it feel risky to do that, to be like the first baseball player to do that?
Well, I think risky. I mean, if you're going to take a risk, I think you take it with someone like Michael.
Yeah.
You know, so I don't necessarily think it was risky on my part. You know, plus it was the cool factor, you know.
Right.
I mean, everyone wanted to be associated with Michael back then.
And now.
Yeah, now too. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
Good point. Same thing. So I didn't look at it as being risky.
Yeah. So let's shift to sort of post-baseball. And, you know, we talk about this a lot, and Alex has shared some of this before. But that moment when you decide to retire, I mean, there's the decision, and then there's the execution. And the moment when you are no longer a professional athlete, you're no longer a New York Yankee, at least as your job. But what is that moment like when you wake up that morning, you're like, oh, okay.
The decision or afterwards?
Tell us about the decision and then after.
Well, the decision was not a difficult decision. They would have got rid of me anyway. They were trying to run me out. So the decision was
Join the club.
Yeah, the decision wasn't a difficult decision. I'd broken my ankle twice. I basically missed the previous year, and I wanted to have one more season. I wanted to play a season healthy. So I called Hal Steinbrenner and told him, and he said, look, you know, you deserve to announce it any way you want to announce it. I announced it before the season started because I knew if I did not, that I'd be asked about it all the time. You know, every single day. My teammates would be asked about it. So I announced it before the season, and then when the season was over with, man, I was tired. You know, I really was tired. It's 20 years in New York. I've jokingly said it's like dog years. It's 140 years playing in New York. I got everything I could get out of my career, and physically I was done.
What's your business mindset at that point? Because obviously you've been thinking about it for a time. You're partnered with Jordan, Brandon, those sorts of things, and we've talked about this. You're in New York, so I mean, you have access, and beyond name recognition, you have sort of access to a lot of corporate minds, investment minds, etc. What are the first few things that you think about doing?
Well, first, I didn't start preparing for post-playing career the day I woke up the next day, right? Afterwards, I started preparing for post-career years in advance. One of my biggest fears in life is being unprepared in anything. A lot of times you hear athletes say games slows down or it speeds up. I think it speeds up when you're unprepared. So I didn't want to wake up and say, what am I going to do next? I started talking about team ownership maybe 10 years left in my career. During my career, I made every decision when it came to contract negotiations, marketing, philanthropy. I'm on foundation. These are all pillars of an organization. I lived in Tampa. I learned about player development and scouting and analytics. So I wanted to be as prepared as I could. I started a company called the Players Tribune. We actually launched right after my career.
Right.
I didn't just wake up and say, let's start a company today.
Right.
You start thinking about these things. And that's why I think that it made my transition into the business world, so to speak, a lot easier because I started preparing and I started learning for it.
And Derek, when you talk about the Marlins deal, that team that went to the playoffs this year for the Marlins with very, very limited resources has your handprints all over it. The pitching, the development, the people you hired. And I was in the community and I just heard all the great things you were doing in that community. What would you say was the hardest part and the best part of being CEO and owner of the Marlins?
The hardest part was having patience because you want things, as a player, you get a hit, you don't get a hit.
You're listening to The Deal with Alex Rodriguez and Jason Kelly on Bloomberg Radio.
You're listening to the Podcast Spotlight Hour on Bloomberg Radio. World markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com and the Bloomberg Business app. This is Bloomberg 1130. Now, a global news update.
The largest crane on the East Coast is now on the scene of the Baltimore Bridge collapse. There's about 4,000 tons of debris that needs to be cleared from the bow of the ship that crashed into the Francis Scott Key Bridge earlier this week. The debris has been hindering efforts of crews searching for the 4 construction workers who remain missing and are presumed dead. The search for their bodies has been paused due to the dangers created by the debris. Former President Trump is holding a fundraiser in Palm Beach. The April 6th fundraiser will be hosted by a hedge fund founder, according to The Hill. President Biden brought in $26 million in his star-studded Radio City Music Hall fundraiser featuring former Presidents Obama and Clinton on Thursday. Trump is expected to raise $33 million at his upcoming event. The former president trails Biden by millions in total campaign cash on hand. A funeral service was held this morning for former Connecticut Senator Joseph Lieberman in his hometown of Stamford. He died Wednesday in New York City due to complications from a fall, according to his family. Lieberman was 82 years old. I'm Lisa Taylor.
And I'm Ed Kalegi in the Bloomberg Newsroom. Here are some of the stories we're watching. Markets may be closed on Good Friday, but it is a busy day when it comes to economic data. Bloomberg's Nathan Hager has the recap. We got the Federal Reserve's preferred measure of inflation, the core PCE deflator, and it came in a bit cooler than expected with a 0.3% increase from January. That was after a 0.5% gain that month, making it the biggest back-to-back increase in a year. Digging deeper, services inflation came in a bit weaker than expected. At the same time, consumer spending blew past all estimates on the back of the biggest wage gains in more than a year. All this suggests the Fed will still be in no rush to cut interest rates. They get one more PCE reading before the next rate decision, May 1st. In New York, Nathan Hager, Bloomberg Radio. And dovetailing on Nathan's report, Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell has repeated that the U.S. Central Bank is not in any rush to cut interest rates. We don't need to be in a hurry to cut, Powell said Friday at an event at the San Francisco Fed. Chair Powell said fresh inflation data released earlier is pretty much in line with our expectations. But Powell reiterated it won't be appropriate to lower rates until officials are confident inflation is on track toward their 2% goal. It's good to see something coming in line with the expectations, he said, adding that the latest readings aren't as good as what policymakers saw last year. Jefferies Financial Group's revenue jump due to strong capital markets and rebounding investment banking bodes well for the bigger banks due to reporting weeks to come. The benchmark KBW Bank Index advanced 0.9% on Thursday, closing at the highest since March 6th of 2023, shortly before turmoil struck the industry. The index has yet to fully recover from the epic run on Silicon Valley Bank and the series of lender collapses that hurt the sector last year. The gauge is about 4% below where it was at the start of March of 2023, while the S&P 500 has soared 33% during the same period. Jefferies, with a market value of a little more than $9.3 billion, is not part of the index, but its results have long been viewed as an early indicator for other Wall Street banks. Its fiscal quarter ends a month ahead of the calendar quarter. Global news 24 hours a day and whenever you want it with Bloomberg News Now. I'm Ed Kalegi, and this is Bloomberg.
Now your 3-day weather forecast on Bloomberg 1130.
It'll be partly to mostly sunny and windy through this afternoon. Temperature-wise, about 55 to near 60. Tonight, clear, breezy, and cool, down to about 40 midtown Manhattan, 30s in the suburbs. Tomorrow, increasing clouds and breezy, 55 to 60. Just some clouds around, though, for tomorrow night, 45 to 50. And partly sunny for Easter Sunday. High temperature then should be right around 60. This is Gary Best, here with your 3-day weather forecast on Bloomberg 1130.
The business world's most prominent voices join David Weston for Bloomberg Wall Street Week.
This week, Larry Fink of BlackRock on the American retirement crisis he sees. Gillian Tett of the Financial Times on investing in a time of geopolitical turmoil. And Josh Bolton of the Business Roundtable on what American CEOs are looking for in their next president.
Bloomberg Wall Street Week, tonight at 6 on Bloomberg 1130. Or on demand wherever you get your podcasts. Bloomberg Radio. Context changes everything.
And now Martha Stewart for Skechers. When I make a dish or embark on a craft project, I always use the finest, most fabulous ingredients and materials. Which is why, when it comes to footwear, I love Skechers. Because Skechers is the comfort technology company and uses the most luxurious, innovative materials and designs to make wondrously comfortable footwear with all the fits and features like Arch Fit and Skechers' world-famous air-cooled memory foam. It's exactly the way I make shoes.
Find Skechers at a Skechers store, Skechers.com, or wherever stylish footwear is sold.
Don't you love an extra $100 in your pocket? Have a TurboTax expert file your taxes for you by March 31st to get $100 back instantly. Because no matter what moves you made last year, TurboTax makes them count. That means getting $100 back and 100% accurate taxes. Only from Intuit TurboTax. Must file by 3/31. Credit only applicable to federal filing fees with TurboTax full service. Offer can be modified or terminated at any time.
Why just listen to Bloomberg Surveillance when you can also watch us live on YouTube? I'm Lisa Mateo.
And I'm Tom Keene. Join us weekday mornings along with Paul Sweeney and Michael Barr starting at 7 a.m.
Head to the Bloomberg podcast page on YouTube to hear and see the smartest voices on global markets and investment.
Make Bloomberg Surveillance an essential part of your morning routine weekdays from 7 to 10.
Visit the Bloomberg podcast page on YouTube and click on the live feeds to join us today.
Find what you love what you find. Total Wine and More, there's so much waiting for you. All kinds of beers and thousands of wines. Walk right through the door, it's all here to explore. With guys in the know and prices so low, it just might blow your mind. You wanna find what you love and love what you find.
Be responsibly, be 21. Pop culture is something that touches everyone. It's how we fill our leisure time and how we enjoy ourselves, particularly when you're talking about the famous people, the big personalities in entertainment and tech. There tends to be a need to sensationalize, but what I enjoy is explaining to people how the things that they love get made, come to be, and how people make money off of it. I'm Lucas Shaw, and I cover the business of pop culture for Bloomberg. My job is to uncover how entertainment is changing and explain what that means for you, because context changes everything.
Breaking news first.
FTX co-founder Sam Bankman-Fried has now been sentenced to 25 years in prison.
Ordered to forfeit more than $1 billion.
It's a very tough sentence, but it was expected.
There was no explicit apology. That's something a lot of people were listening for and looking for
This is going to take him well into late middle age if this sentence stands.
It's a stiff deterrent to anybody who plays outside the lines.
Continuing coverage and complete analysis on Bloomberg 1130. Context changes everything.
This is the Bloomberg Money Minute.
We'd now like to welcome any travelers with carry-ons that have no chance of fitting in the overhead compartment.
If you've flown lately, you know what this SNL skit is talking about. Those people who try to board with those huge carry-on bags. The thing is, it won't all fit.
There is not enough room for all the carry-on luggage that people want to bring on.
Elaine Becker, Managing Director, Senior Airline Analyst at TD Cowen.
Some of the older aircraft that haven't been retrofitted, they can't accommodate all the bags.
So here it comes, the clampdown Southwest, now only allowing passengers one personal item, like your purse or your laptop. Becker says this could help airlines streamline boarding and save money.
So you can actually have your aircraft in the air more hours per day.
And Becker also says even as airlines limit carry-ons, they're also making more on you on checked bags and other services, about $2 billion in January and February, up 13% from this time a year ago. Denise Pellegrini, Bloomberg Radio.
Now, a sports update on Bloomberg 1130. At the Sweet 16, Purdue battles Gonzaga, Houston takes on Duke, Marquette faces NC State, and Tennessee meets Creighton. The Yankees play in Houston tonight. They're in the fourth inning at Citi Field. The Mets and Brewers are tied at 1. NBA, the next visit the Spurs. The Nets host the Bulls. Timberwolves owner Glen Taylor says the team's no longer for sale after Alex Rodriguez and Mark Lurie did not meet the deadline to close the deal. That's the Bloomberg Sports Update. I'm Joel Scher.
You're listening to the Big Take Podcast on Bloomberg Radio. I'm Sarah Holder. Today, we're talking about allegations of harassment and drug use in Citigroup's equities division and what they reveal about the rest of Wall Street's overdue Me Too reckoning. Wall Street has never had a reputation for impeccable behavior. Headlines and pop culture often show a cutthroat industry with toxicity bubbling right beneath the surface. But Citigroup appeared to be different. In 2021, the bank promoted Jane Fraser to CEO, making her the first female CEO of any major Wall Street bank. And the company touted a concerted effort to prioritize diversity and inclusion. But in November of last year, a managing director at the bank named Ardis Lindsay filed a lawsuit accusing Citigroup of harassment and discrimination.
The managing director painted this sort of picture of just an extremely dysfunctional workplace, sort of rife with discrimination and sexual harassment and drug use that she says persisted over a number of years.
My Bloomberg colleague Paige Smith covered the lawsuit in November and then kept digging. She worked with finance reporter Max Abelson, who's covered Wall Street for years. And together, they uncovered a much bigger story about problems in Citigroup's equities division and the finance industry's long path to reckoning with how it treats women.
The story is a reminder that questions about gender and behavior are not abstract at all. And the question of corporations and what they owe their employees is a very real thing with real consequences.
Today on the show, we go inside Citigroup and explore what behavior within this one unit reveals about just how far Wall Street still has to go. This is The Big Take from Bloomberg News. I'm Sarah Holder. In November of 2023, Citigroup executive Ardis Lindsay filed a lawsuit against the bank, accusing it of tolerating a culture of harassment and discrimination in its equities unit. Citigroup has said it will defend itself against her claims. But for Bloomberg reporter Paige Smith, the legal filing opened a rare window into part of Citigroup's culture. She wanted to pry it all the way open. So, Paige, where does the reporting process take you next? What other questions did you want to ask?
I think the thing that we really wanted to uncover with this piece was understanding that the lawsuit was one person's experience within the equities division, but we really wanted to learn more about how widespread the alleged behavior was, how many people had experienced it, over what period of time, what kinds of experiences maybe extended beyond those described in the lawsuit. So our reporting sort of brought us to these interviews with these men in or workers of the equities division over a long period of time.
Can you describe any more of the specific allegations that were unearthed in these conversations?
One instance that is one depiction of some of the dysfunction that we uncovered in our reporting was a client party at a sort of buzzy downtown club restaurant called Catch in May 2018, where there were rappers performing, there were Citigroup employees there were clients there, and there were also two people linked to the equities division there, a young 2-year rotator and her roommate. And at the time, the night sort of progressed, and one of the unit's bosses actually came up and started sort of grinding his crotch against the young 2-year rotator's roommate.
That's according to two people present who said they saw the incident.
It was an instance that sort of stuck out to us as just showing that this behavior was not just tolerated, but witnessed by a number of people within the division, and it was not just a standalone incident, but kind of a pattern of harassment.
And what I find impressive about Paige's reporting is that it doesn't just stop there. She also has that rotator going on to be told to like wear higher heels to work and to wear shorter skirts. And I think that there was a male trader who kept asking about her love life. Paige's work depicts not just these individual instances, but a pattern of a unit where all was not well.
What is the culture of an equities division generally?
Well, you know, Wall Street, like any high-stakes corporate environment, is never perfect. When there's a lot of money to be made or to be lost, I think it's completely normal to expect a certain level of intensity and competitiveness, but we're not talking about pedestrian, banal competitiveness. We're talking about people who were using cocaine, and not just after hours, but at work. One person had to tell another to wipe the white residue beneath their nose, you know, inside the Manhattan headquarters. And it's also, you know, it's not a matter of like policing other people's drug use. There's also a pattern that she found of men rating their female colleagues, including very, very young ones, by their looks, and ogling that and staring at their bodies as they walk by. I think that if it's fair to expect a certain level of intensity and competitiveness, that's certainly fair, but it's also fair to expect that at some of the biggest companies in the world, like, people shouldn't be objectified and be stared at and sort of face sort of an unusual degree of drug use, like on a random day.
Absolutely. But what did Citi say about some of the specific allegations that you raised?
A city spokesperson did respond to many of our questions, and one of the responses that we received was that while several of the alleged incidents would have violated the bank's code of conduct, you know, some of them did not receive a complaint, or others were old, or others complained